They told me it was only grass. The HOA said I was overreacting. Karen said I didn't own the sidewalk, while her Escalade carved fresh tire scars straight through my front lawn every single morning. I filed complaints. I put up signs. I pleaded. None of it mattered. Until the day I finally snapped and decided that if they wanted to keep cutting across my property, I'd give them something unforgettable to drive through. By the end of this story, the HOA would go quiet, Karen would be screaming, and her luxury SUV would never look the same again. It wasn't the sight that broke me. That came later. It was the sound, that soft, wet crunch of tires tearing into freshly watered grass at exactly 6:42 a.m. every weekday, like clockwork. I was halfway through my coffee when I heard again, followed by the low rumble of an engine accelerating away. I stood at the window, mug frozen in midair, watching the silver Escalade roll back onto the street like it had done nothing wrong. There was again a clean diagonal scar sliced straight across my lawn. I'd spent 3 weekends repairing that section. 3 HOA-approved reseeding, soil treatment, polite little flags that read new lawn, please avoid. None of it mattered, because apparently my corner lot was a suggestion, not a boundary. My name's Matt. I moved into this neighborhood because it was quiet, predictable, the kind of place where the loudest sound at night was a sprinkler clicking on. What I didn't realize was that quiet neighborhoods come with HOAs, and HOAs attract people who believe rules only apply to everyone else. Karen lived 3 houses down. Blonde bob haircut, permanent sunglasses, a voice sharp enough to cut glass. She chaired the Architectural Compliance Committee, a title that sounded made up until she reminded you of it constantly. I confronted her the first time politely, the second time with frustration, the third time with photos. "That's not your lawn," she told me, standing beside her Escalade, arms crossed. "That's HOA-managed green space." "It's literally on my deed," I said. She smiled, not kindly. "Then sue us." I filed a formal complaint that afternoon, attached timestamps, photos, tire measurements. I even marked the damage with little orange flags like a crime scene. 2 weeks later, the HOA responded. "We find no violation." The next morning, I woke up early. I wanted to catch her in the act. As the sun rose, I stood barefoot in the grass, staring at that same corner. Then I heard the engine, and this time she didn't slow down. The Escalade rolled straight through my lawn, like it had permission. I stood there, frozen, toes damp with morning dew as the SUV bounced slightly over the uneven ground. Karen didn't even look at me. She sipped from a travel mug, one hand loose on the wheel, sunglasses fixed forward like blinders. The tires flattened another strip of grass, deeper this time, carving a rut that wouldn't disappear with water and hope. "Hey!" I shouted, waving my arms. She tapped the horn once, a friendly little beep. Then she was gone. I didn't yell after her. I didn't chase the car. I just stared at the damage, jaw tight, chest buzzing with something halfway between disbelief and anger. This wasn't an accident anymore. This was intentional. By 9 a.m., I was sitting in the HOA office, a beige room that smelled like old carpet and burnt coffee. Across from me sat Greg, the HOA president, retired accountant, friendly smile, eyes that slid away when things got uncomfortable. "She's using my lawn as a shortcut," I said, laying out printed photos like courtroom evidence. "Daily. I've talked to her. I've filed complaints. Nothing's changing." Greg adjusted his glasses. "Karen says the corner is part of a community easement." "It's not," I replied. "I paid a surveyor." "I understand your frustration," he said, in the exact tone people use when they don't plan to help. "But escalating neighbor disputes can create tension." I laughed once, sharp. "So can property damage." He leaned back. "Maybe consider landscaping adjustments. Decorative rocks, perhaps." "So I should redesign my yard because she doesn't feel like using the road?" Greg smiled again, the HOA smile, the kind that says a conversation is over. That afternoon, a notice appeared on my door. Violation warning. Unapproved lawn markers. Apparently, my orange flags were now considered visually disruptive. I stood there holding the paper, reading it twice. Then a third time, slower. My hands weren't shaking with rage yet, but with something colder. The realization that the system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed. The next morning, I installed a small, tasteful wooden sign near the corner. Private property. Please stay on road. By evening, it was gone. No broken post. No debris. Just gone. And as the sun set, I watched Karen stand in her driveway. Phone pressed to her ear, laughing. That's when I understood. She wasn't just cutting across my lawn. She was daring me to stop her. The HOA newsletter arrived on Friday. Glossy paper. Smiling families. A full page reminder about community harmony. And right there, nestled between pool hours and pet etiquette, was a paragraph that made my stomach sink. Reminder: all residents must refrain from obstructing community easements or attempting to restrict neighbor access. No names were listed. None were necessary. That afternoon, I walked the property line with the surveyor's map tucked under my arm. The sun sat high, heat shimmering off the asphalt. I knelt and pressed a small metal stake into the ground where my lawn ended and the sidewalk began. Then another, and another, perfectly aligned. Quiet. Exact. I wasn't trying to start a war. I was trying to finish one. At 6:41 the next morning, I waited on my porch. The Escalade appeared right on schedule, engine humming like it belonged there. Karen slowed just slightly, her eyes flicking to the stakes. For a split second, I thought this was it. Maybe logic would finally win. She swerved. The front tire clipped the first stake, snapping it clean off. The second bent beneath the weight of the SUV. Dirt sprayed. Grass tore. She didn't stop. She didn't even hesitate. I shouted her name. She rolled the window down just enough for her voice to carry. "Stop harassing me," she said, calm as iced tea. "I've already reported you." That word again. Reported. By noon, a yellow tow truck notice was taped to my door. Final warning. Unauthorized property alterations. Apparently, stakes were now considered hazardous installations. I ripped it down, hands shaking, not with fear anymore, but with clarity. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to sprinklers click on and off, replaying every conversation, every smile, every dismissal. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was entitlement wrapped in policy. Around 2 a.m., I got up and went to garage. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, just something. Control. Proof that I wasn't powerless in my own home. My eyes passed over old tools, scrap wood, half-finished projects. Then they landed on a dusty corner shelf. My college engineering textbooks. I laughed quietly, not because it was funny, but because an idea had crossed my mind that was so ridiculous, so completely out of character, it felt dangerous just to think it. I closed the garage door slowly, and for the first time since this began, I smiled. By morning, the smile was gone. In its place was that heavy, sober feeling you get when you realize a thought you had in the dark still makes sense in the light. I stood in the shower, water pounding my shoulders, replaying it again and again. Don't be stupid. You're not that guy. Just sell the house. But every time I imagined listing it, I saw tire tracks slicing through the grass like a signature, like she'd won. I called the HOA again, straight to voicemail. I emailed auto reply, "We appreciate your patience." I knocked on Greg's door that afternoon. No answer, even though his car was in the driveway. Curtains moved. That was the moment something shifted. Not snapped, not exploded, just hardened. I wasn't angry in the loud way anymore. I was focused. Over the next few days, Karen kept doing it. Sometimes slower, sometimes faster. Once she waved, actually waved. I caught it on my doorbell camera, her hand lifting casually like we were neighbors sharing a joke. The lawn was ruined now. Deep grooves. Mud where grass used to be. One morning, the sprinkler head on that corner snapped clean off, water geysering straight into the street, while she drove through without slowing. That afternoon, an HOA truck arrived. Not for her, for me. A man in a polo shirt informed me my lawn was unsightly and in violation of community standards. He handed me a fine. I laughed, couldn't help it, and asked if the damage counted as an act of God. No, he said. Vehicle damage is a homeowner responsibility. That night, I went back into the garage. I didn't measure anything. I didn't sketch plans. I didn't Google. I just started clearing space. Old wood to one side, scrap metal to the other. Things I'd meant to throw out for years suddenly felt useful. I kept telling myself this was symbolic, a stress project, something to burn off frustration. But as I worked, I pictured her Escalade cutting the corner again, the suspension dipping, the smug certainty that nothing would happen. And for the first time, I imagined a consequence she couldn't file away or smile through. Outside, I heard an engine pass. Slow, deliberate. I froze, listening as tires rolled through dirt that used to be my lawn. And in the silence afterward, I realized I wasn't asking if something would happen anymore. Only when. Escalation doesn't start with yelling. It starts with silence. The kind that settles in your chest when you stop hoping someone will do the right thing, when you stop explaining, when you stop documenting, when you just observe. That's where I was now. I stopped fixing the lawn, stopped replacing the sprinkler head, let the damage sit there like a photograph no one wanted to acknowledge. The HOA notices kept coming, then envelopes, heavier fines. But something had changed. They weren't warnings anymore. They were pressure, the kind meant to make you fold. Karen noticed. She slowed even more when she cut across now, almost savoring it. Sometimes she rolled the window down and talked loudly on her phone, just enough for me to hear her laughing. Once she pointed at the mud and shook her head like I was the problem. The HOA board held an emergency meeting about my property. They didn't invite me. I found out because Greg accidentally CC'd me on an email thread titled Next Steps, Non-Compliant Lot. I read every word. Landscaping requirements, potential liens, legal language sharpened into a quiet threat. That night, I sat in the garage on an upside-down bucket, staring at what I'd built so far. It didn't look like much yet, just a shape, a suggestion, wood and metal arranged in a way that made my heart beat faster when I looked at it. Not because it was violent, because it was decisive. I wasn't planning harm. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning a message. Outside, headlights swept across the garage door. I killed the lights instinctively. Peering through the side window, Karen slowed at the corner, stopped for the first time ever. She leaned out the window, looking straight at my house. Not angry, curious, calculating. Then she smiled. She drove through the lawn anyway, harder than usual, spraying mud up against my siding. I stood in the dark, heart pounding, realizing she wasn't just confident. She felt untouchable. That's the thing about people like her. They never see the moment coming. The exact second someone decides they're done being patient. The morning air stung my lungs. I stood in the garage, door cracked, watching condensation rise off the ruined corner of my lawn. Mud, ruts, shredded grass. No effort to hide the damage. It looked less like a yard, more like a warning everyone had ignored. I hadn't slept, not anxious, calm in a way that scared me a little. At 6:38 a.m., I heard her engine. Habitually, I checked my phone, doorbell camera armed, time-stamped, recording everything. I stepped into the driveway, just enough to be seen. She didn't slow. The Escalade cut the corner, suspension dipping as usual. But this time, something shifted. She hesitated, just a fraction, as if she sensed it, too. Her eyes flicked to the garage. I raised my hand, not to wave, just acknowledgement. Tires hit soft ground. The vehicle lurched. Then crack. The sound was sharp, wrong. Not metal, not plastic, with snapping under sudden force. The Escalade jolted to a stop halfway through my lawn. One wheel tilted unnaturally. Karen slammed on the brakes. She jumped out, heels sinking into mud, screaming before even looking at the damage. "What did you do?" she shouted. I stayed calm, hands visible. "Nothing," I said. It was true. I hadn't touched the SUV, hadn't stepped on the lawn, hadn't moved. She crouched, staring under the car, Panic broke through the fury. Oil dripped into dirt. Her perfect routine collapsed into confusion and fear. Neighbors emerged, phones raised, whispering. She sabotaged it. Karen yelled. I looked at the yard, the ruined grass, the path she carved every day for months. I've been asking you to stop, I said quietly. For a long time. Sirens echoed in the distance. Watching her face shift from anger to calculation to cold realization, I knew this wasn't the end. This was when the story went public. By the time the HOA president arrived, the scene resembled a battlefield. Mud, flattened grass, and the Escalade perched at a ridiculous angle. Karen stomped beside it, arms crossed, face red, pointing at me. Greg showed up in his navy polo, clipboard in hand, eyes darting between the car and me. Matt, what happened here? His voice tried for calm, but panic leaked through. I warned her, I said. Simple, flat, truthful. You warned her. Karen barked. You built a trap. This is malicious damage. I raised my hands. Not a trap, a deterrent. She drove across anyway. Neighbors filmed, whispered, pointed. Awe, fear, curiosity. Greg sighed, rubbing temples. Technically, damage to personal property, but the SUV is partially on your lawn. Legal gray area. Karen froze. Gray area? Are you kidding me? It's the same gray area where my complaints went ignored. I said. Greg muttered about insurance, liability, already calculating how to keep the HOA out of court. Karen stomped toward me, heels in mud. You're going to pay for this. Repair the damage? I asked innocently. I mean everything, she shouted. I blinked, then laughed once. Pure release of months of tension. A neighbor gasped. Karen turned, eyes wide. That's when the first tow truck arrived. Not for me, for her. She yelled into the phone, waving arms like a general in retreat. HOA emails and emergency meeting notices went out frantically. Greg tried to stay calm, but the board's panic was palpable. The entire neighborhood was paying attention. I had leverage. I looked at my battlefield, mud, ruts, broken grass, and smiled. Karen had underestimated what happens when someone refuses to be ignored. By mid-morning, chaos was everywhere. Phones out, social media clips circulating. Whispers spread faster than wildfire. Everyone had an opinion. Most sided with me. Mrs. Patel, 2 doors down, took careful photos, shaking her head. Finally, someone stood up to her. She muttered. Kids peeked through fences, whispering like a soap opera. Mr. Jennings, the retired lawyer, subtly gave me a thumbs up. Karen spiraled, hair messy, blazer mud-streaked, running between SUV and HOA president. This is sabotage, she screeched. This isn't a lawn. This is a trap. I'm calling the police. 20 minutes later, officers arrived. Karen launched into her story, painting me as a villain. I stayed calm, explained clearly, photos, timestamps, witnesses. One officer, older woman, even gaze, asked Karen, did you have permission to drive across private property? Karen faltered. Technically, HOA managed. The officer raised an eyebrow. So, technically you didn't. Confidence evaporated. Half the street had cameras, neighbors shaking heads. The HOA tried to intervene, citing easement rules. Even Greg looked uncomfortable. By noon, Karen was on the phone, muttering under breath, police advising careful assessment. I went inside, breathed deeply. Adrenaline buzzed, but beneath it, quiet satisfaction. My voice had been heard. Then a faint hum drifted over the yard. The silver Escalade. Engine purring as if yesterday had been a dream. I stepped onto the porch, hands on railing, heart thumping. Neighborhood watched, phones out. This isn't over, Karen said, tight smile, almost sinister. You think a scare will stop me? I stayed quiet, didn't wave, didn't flinch. She tested the mud, subtle hesitation, glancing at my garage, broken ground. She'd learned or sensed something, I thought. By now, she was angry, fueled. Certain HOA, neighbors, even police couldn't stop her. Tires hit reinforced ground, sank. Mud spat. She cursed. The crowd shouted warnings. Cameras rolling, live stream starting. Karen slammed brakes. Tires slid, leaving slick marks. She jumped out, hands shaking, face red, mud-covering shoes. "This is harassment," she yelled. "You're destroying property." "No," I said calmly. "You've been destroying my property for months. I just made sure you understood consequences." Officers arrived again, shaking heads. Even Greg muttered about liability, community outrage. Karen's expression shifted from anger to panic. Witnesses everywhere, fully behind me. She realized, no power here. Months of observation, documentation, patience, silent planning had led to this tipping point. For the first time, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt untouchable. The aftermath was surreal. Escalade stuck, mud streaking paint, tires sunken in ruts she carved for months. She circled it, frantically dialing insurance. HOA, anyone who would answer. Neighbors gathered, murmuring, pointing, snapping photos. Some cheered quietly, others shook their heads. Greg arrived, clipboard shaking. "Matt, technically the vehicle is on your property," he said slowly. "This complicates everything." Karen froze, realizing she had no legal ground. Police took statements. Insurance confirmed damage was her responsibility. She looked at me, red-faced, mud-streaked, furious, defeated. I didn't answer. Calmly, I savored victory. "This isn't fair," she shouted. "Fair isn't what got your SUV stuck. Understanding boundaries does." I said. She stomped to her driveway, muttering threats no one listened to. Tow truck arrived. Escalade pulled out. Deep gouges in lawn, mud everywhere. Poetic justice. HOA tried afterward, letters, meetings, citing rules, but the neighborhood already saw the truth. I walked the yard. Broken grass, mud patches, bent sprinkler heads, missing stakes. And I smiled. Every scar a story. Boundaries mattered. Persistence mattered. Quiet people could fight back in unexpected ways. By sunset, street quiet again. Sprinklers hum, distant engines, faint smell of drying mud. Karen never drove across that corner again. Escalade repaired, never the same. I sat with coffee, staring at the yard. Victory isn't about being loud. It's about being right, refusing to back down. The lawn wasn't just grass. It was proof. Proof that patience, planning, and a little creativity could stand up to even the most relentless Karen. The neighborhood would talk about this for years. Story over, or at least until the next HOA drama. If you felt that tension, tap like, standing up to unfairness starts with one choice. Subscribe to Karen's Hub to see more stories of ordinary people reclaiming control. And tell me below, how would you have handled Karen like this? If you want, I can also create 3 vivid image prompts based on this epic finale for thumbnail or story visuals. It'll make it instantly cinematic. Do you want me to do that next? Need 3 prompts for image. Here are 3 detailed image prompts inspired by the dramatic finale of your story. 1. The Escalade stuck in the yard. A luxury silver SUV stuck at an awkward angle in a muddy, damaged lawn, deep tire ruts and splattered mud around it. Early morning light casting long shadows, with a few neighbors watching in shock and whispering. The owner, a calm man in casual clothes, stand on the porch, hands on railing, watching. Background, suburban neighborhood with trimmed hedges and typical HOA houses. Slight tension and cinematic drama in the atmosphere. 2. The moment of calm victory. A quiet suburban street at sunset, lawn scarred with mud, flattened grass, and broken sprinkler heads. The protagonist, a man holding a cup of coffee, stands on his porch with a satisfied, calm expression. Neighbors peek from behind fences. Phones raise, some cheering quietly. Background, an Escalade parked slightly off the yard, mud streaked on its tires and paint. Mood, cinematic, tense yet triumphant, with golden sunlight highlighting the scene. 3. HOA showdown in progress. Crowd of neighbors gathered around a silver SUV half on a lawn, mud everywhere, flattened grass and broken stakes. A woman in a blazer, Karen, yelling angrily, pointing at the man calmly standing nearby. Police officers taking notes. clipboard-wielding HOA president looking stressed. Suburban homes in the background, early morning light, cinematic, chaotic but focused on tension and dramatic confrontation.